So, hey everyone, uh, like thanks for joining us today. And so we had a last minute change. So Danish was supposed to host this event, but he couldn't. He was away on some other work. So I'm your host today. So I think everyone knows me. I'm Afrid. So yeah, I'm an Umbraco MVP and co-organizer in UIUG. So for this session, we are actually excited about the new search. And like if you have been working with Umbraco and search, you will have you have worked with search as well. So the new framework introduces like better provide agnostic abstraction layer. That's so you don't have to just use examine. You can mix and match whatever tech you like Elastic or Algolia or TypeSense or whatever you want. So, and we have an like search AI package right now. So you can use AI in there as well. So today we have Kenn Jacobsen. He's an four-time Umbraco MVP, and he have been like working in the agency world for a while, and he have moved into Umbraco HQ lately. And yeah, he's a principal engineer in Umbraco. And yeah, so welcome, Ken. And yeah, happy to see you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we can just get into the sessions and yeah, you can share the screen or you can have the
Cool.
floor.
I will take over. All right, yeah, but welcome and thank you for joining. Let me see if I can figure out how to share stuff here. So, Umbraco search screen. You should hopefully see my screen now. A slight disclaimer, I really can't see much of you. I have a tiny sidebar over here, so if you need to say something, shout. And if you have a question going on, just interrupt. I don't care. Um, any which way, Umbraco Search is coming very soon. Or it's been out for a while actually, but it's in beta. So calling it new is probably overdoing it at this point. We've actually been at it for on and off for a year now.
Uh, uh, Ken, you are muted right now. Not sure why.
I'm muted. Oh, brilliant. All right? I don't know how much you heard about that, but am I muted now?
Yeah,
Oh, I think
you're
we're
audible.
good.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so back on track. Long story short, search for Umbraco is being rewritten from the ground up. It's a complete rewrite of what we have today. Um, for Umbraco 18, 17, and 18, we're adding it or we're creating it as an add-on. So we're not moving search into core just yet. It means you can opt into it anytime you want, but we won't be removing what we know today. Not yet, anyway. And because we have very little imagination, we call it Umbraco Search. Do with that what you want. We are still powered by Examine, at least by default. So we're not doing this to get rid of Examine, not at all. We're doing this for a whole bunch of other reasons. So the gist of this is we're rewriting it from scratch, and we're still powering it by Examine. So why would we ever go and do this? Well, there are two main drivers for this, and the first thing is today it's extremely hard to use anything else than Examine when you do search for Umbraco. If you want to use any other product or any other technology, you have to reinvent the wheel. Basically, you have to start from scratch to build all sorts of things, and it's really complicated. And where we envision Umbraco search is something more like this, where search or a concrete search technology becomes something that you swap in and swap out So we can lean on any search technology out there, in principle at least, including, of course, Examine. But what we want to have here is an abstraction layer that allows us to swap search providers pretty much on the fly, without having to rewrite everything from scratch. The point is, of course, that we can evolve our things over time. So we can build our entire implementation on one search technology, and we can shift to another if the need arises. And it doesn't have to be going upscale. I mean, the complete opposite thing could also be a thing. Maybe you started out on Elasticsearch with intentions of using something, and you realize at some point you're just overpaying for stuff you never use. Well, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to go and use something else instead without having to rewrite everything you did for search. That's the core idea here. And also Examine X, the out of process version of Examine, it still works with Umbraco Search, of course, because it is by default powered by Examine, which means Examine X seamlessly also just works with this. So that was the first reason. Now, the other reason why we want to do this whole thing is search is kind of hard to build with Umbraco. Even a simple free text search involves a lot of moving parts, really, and we want to lower the bar or the entry point for building appealing search experiences. Essentially, we want to be friendly also when it comes to search. So this is kind of all the stuff you need to write just to query something, a free text query. And I mean, there's a lot of boilerplate going on here. You need to do a whole bunch of things. You need to know a whole bunch of things just to query something by text. And don't even get me started on building faceted search and all that. It becomes a nightmare very, very quickly. So we want to take this and we want to turn it into this. And I know that doesn't really seem like a lot, but the whole point is right here with this arrow. That's where everything happens, and that's where the Umbraco Search abstraction layer takes over. Essentially, executing search becomes a one-liner. You don't have to worry about fiddling with facets or figuring out what is a filter. You have a one-liner, you feed it with different parameters, you get a search result and facets and whatever you have. And that's kind of why we're doing this. This is the other half of the coin. We want search to be easy to achieve and build. So features. Of course, full text search is that's kind of a given thing with Umbraco Search. Of course, we have full text search. Facets and filters, they are baked into Umbraco Search, so that's out of the box. You get that right off the bat, which is really awesome because if you ever build a faceted search, you'll know it's kind of annoying and it's tedious and it's error prone and it just takes a lot of time and you have a bunch of code to manage and it's different from provider to provider. So you have a lot of tedious work when you shift around with things. Languages and segments are also supported. We have somewhat language support today in search, but we have absolutely no segment support in search. But those will be first-class citizens in Umbraco Search, so we can do segmented querying. Protected content is also included in Umbraco Search, so you can have Umbraco Search will be able to distinguish between members, authorized members, and anonymous members or anonymous users of your website. So you can have you can surface protected results for people who have access to them. So that's kind of neat. And then there's a little bit of a weird thing here about understanding property values, or maybe I should say property intent. The thing is, when you index data for search, the intent of the data you index is very, very important to understand. You need to know if this text is really a text for searching, for full text search, or if it's a text for filtering, a keyword essentially. You need to know that a date is really a date so you can do proper filtering by it, and a number and a decimal. And the intent of data is very, very different when you talk about search. And that's why we have built in some new means for us to be able to communicate to search what is the intent of this particular piece of data, property in Umbraco, basically. And Umbraco Search is loaded with extension points. We have search providers, as I just said. That's of course a kind of a big extension point. Building an entire search provider, it takes a bit of time, but it is in principle an extension point. Custom content indexes, so you can define your own indexes if you need something specific, something very tailored to querying something. You can actually create your own indexes relatively easy. And if you absolutely want to, you can feed anything into Umbraco Search, because Umbraco Search is not an abstraction over Umbraco, it's an abstraction over search. So if you have data that you need to surface in a searchable fashion, you can put anything into Umbraco Search in principle. We can always discuss if it's the right thing to do. If you don't own the data, should you own the search? That's an architectural decision, but you can. You can influence how we index anything. You can influence or even decide what we index, and you can also influence when we index things. So we have a bunch of books you can start working with Umbraco Search. Oh, that's nice, but let's see some things, shouldn't we? It's a lot more fun to watch a demo. So here we have Umbraco, and I have created a collection of books. There are 50 of them, and a book is a very small and simple content model here. We have some text. We have some more text for the author. Then we have a tag for the author nationality. We have a numeric value for the published year of this book. And we have an annotation of length here with the radio button group. And on top of this, I have built a search engine or a search front end. It looks like this. And this encompasses the basic feature set from Umbraco Search. We have the full text search. We have some sorting by relevance or by book name or by property value. In this case, by published year. Of course, we have some direction. Then we have filters and facets out here. So we have filters for the length annotation and the nationality, the tagging. And it kind of works the way I hope you would expect search to work. We can pick some recent books. Maybe we want something that's short, and maybe we only want these nationality author. This is not groundbreaking new stuff for search as a concept. This is kind of trivial at this point. This is what you would like search to be. At least that's what we expect you would like search to be. But this, when you compare to what we have today in Umbraco, this is a major leap forward. And remember, everything you see here is that one-liner, just with added parameters for defining filters and facets. So I'm obviously this is not a one-line implementation. Of course it isn't. But the actual execution and procuring of search results, that is indeed just one line, and everything around it is either rendering or figuring out where and which filters to put into the search, which filter values concretely. A subtle thing to notice here, though, is you can see we have this century facet. The content model has absolutely no notion, at least no explicit notion of a century, only implicitly by means of the concrete published year. And that's because we have both range and exact value filters and facets in Umbraco Search, which is just another really nice thing, because facets in themselves, they are annoying to implement. Range facets, they are even more annoying to implement. So having all that baked in is kind of cool. The only thing I've done here is I've defined, well, 4 buckets of centuries essentially, and Umbraco Search figures out how to put the correct books into the correct buckets using the publish year. So all that's good. This is, again, this isn't groundbreaking new stuff from the perspective of search itself, but when you look at Umbraco and search, this is really moving somewhere. Well, this is really moving us forward. So, as I mentioned, we can have different search providers in Umbraco Search. What's more, we can even have multiple search providers at the same time if we want to. There are certain rare scenarios where that actually makes sense, but mostly it makes for a really cool demo. What I've done is I have, of course, installed the default search provider from Umbraco, which is the Examine one. But I've actually also built 4 others. I built one for Algolia. I built one for Elasticsearch. I built one for TypeSense, which is another open source search engine. And then I am in the works with a search provider for PostgreSQL, which is kind of odd because it's not a document database, but it's more a matter of me seeing if it can even be done to create this kind of search with Postgres, and turns out it actually can. So I have all these running in parallel on my site here, and I have Docker in the background to power my Postgres, my TypeSense, and my Elastic. Algolia is out there somewhere in the cloud, and if I pick Algolia, I am now querying the same books, but I'm using Algolia somewhere where their data center is, and it still works the same. Let's reload this. If I go and pick Elasticsearch, it'll try to find my Docker instance, and now I'm searching with Elasticsearch. Still works the same. TypeSense, now I'm using TypeSense, and Postgres, now I'm actually querying with Postgres, and it still works exactly the same. Which is really, really awesome because I haven't written a line of code for either of these technologies. I have only written an implementation on top of Umbraco Search, and I can runtime swap out the engine that I want to use, and it still just works. That's pretty cool, I think. So how does all this come together then? Well, the way it works is, here is my site composer. This is where it all starts. And as I said, Umbraco Search is an add-on. So we have to install it from NuGet, and we have to add the core functionality here that kind of powers up everything. And then I've included back-office search. It's a separate NuGet package, but this means the back-office now is also powered by Umbraco Search. And then I'm adding all the search providers, again, from NuGet. So Elasticsearch, TypeSense, Algolia, Postgres, and Examine as the last, the core search provider, if you will. And this, at this point, everything is up and running. I have search running. I have 5 different search providers. They're all feeding off the content in Umbraco. Well, they almost are. There are a few configurations we need to make specifically for Examine, because Examine behaves a little bit differently than others, or a little bit low level, if you will. I'm not going to bore you with this. I'll show you a link to the docs later, and you can read all about it there. But there are some things we need to do up front to make Examine work the way we would like it to work. And then I'm registering some custom indexes, which is one of the extension points. And why am I doing that? Well, the thing is, Umbraco Core out of the box comes with a few default indexes, like one for published content, one for draft content for the back office search, one for media, and so on. And all of these search providers, they all think they are in charge. So they will individually register themselves as the ones being in charge of the default core search indexes. Effectively, they will take over from one another, and the last in the chain wins, which in this case is Examine. So at this point, even though all the search providers are running, these four they aren't really doing anything, but they have no index to actually manage because Examine stole all of them, took over for all of them. That's okay. We need Examine in this demo. It has to be powering something. It might as well power the default indexes. It's all good. But in order to actually put some data into these other 4 search providers, I have to register some extra indexes for this demo. And you register an extra index by doing this. So we have this 4 times. And what I'm doing here is I am telling Umbraco Search I'm configuring something called index options for Umbraco Search. And index options lets me register a new content index. And here I'm saying, well, I would like an extra index using this specific search technology. So the Algolia indexer, the Algolia searcher should be powering this index. The index alias should be whatever I have in this constant, and it should index documents. And then I do that 4 times each of the other search technologies. And that's really it. Now I have 4 additional indexes running in parallel with the defaults, each powered by their own concrete implementation of Umbraco Search. Now, this is only necessary because I have multiple search providers running at the same time. Again, likely you won't, because it's an odd case, and it's really a demo case, but it's an odd case to have it. Usually you wouldn't be having multiple search providers, which means you would just have that one taking over the default core indexes. Job done. You wouldn't need to register these extra indexes. But this is just to demonstrate that we actually can. So with all this set up, all this works, because now we have our so I have this book cert. It's powered by an API controller, and all I need to do now is to send this picked provider as a parameter for my controller. The controller then needs to resolve the concrete index, either this one or the default one if I picked Examine, and then query that index. And let's have a really quick glance at how that works. So this is the implementation of search, and a lot of this is me figuring out stuff, figuring out the query, the filters, the facets, what I'm supposed to be pushing into Umbraco Search. But this is where I figure out where I want to go to search. My provider is just a query string parameter, defaults to Examine. If it's Algolia, I'll pick the custom index for Algolia and so forth, and I'll default to the core published content index, which I know is powered by Examine. And then I do a whole bunch of calculus here to figure out which filters did I pick, which facets should I be using for my search, what is the search direction, how should I be sorting it, and then here we have that one-liner where I actually perform the search, where Umbraco Search takes over. In this little line here, again, because I'm running multiple search providers, I cannot just inject iSearcher and expect to get away with it. If I only had one search provider, that one search provider would always be my iSearcher. And I could inject that into my controller, all would be good. But because I have multiple search providers, I need to do a runtime resolving. Given an index alias, Umbraco Search knows what is the concrete searcher powering this index. So this is necessary because I have multiple providers running. But that's it. Fire all this off to Umbraco Search, wait for a result, and then generate some kind of response model that my view can understand. Job done. So the point is, there's nothing here, absolutely nothing here, that knows anything about Algolia or Examine or Elasticsearch or anything else. It only knows about Umbraco Search. That is the whole point. So far, so good. We have search results. We have weirdly different providers running at the same time. It's all hopefully still working. Here we go. Brilliant. Let's have a look at some of these extension points. And we will go back to the content model here. So the first thing I want to talk about is this whole idea of understanding intent of data. Because what is the intent of these different properties? Well, likely the intent of this text is to be searchable. So I can go ahead and I can search for a country and I'll find this book. That's kind of likely the intent of a text area. Probably the same for this text box. It's also likely intended to be for free text search, basically. But what about these? Well, Umbraco Search Umbraco Search assumes that the intent of these kind of properties, specifically properties that are either of type text, but with a fixed value set, for example, tags or radio button list. Umbraco Search assumes the intent of these properties is for filtering, so they treat these as keywords. That means I cannot search for British and expect to find the British authors, because keywords are by definition not searchable. They're only meant for filtering and for faceting. The same goes for length. I cannot search for short and expect to find all the short or very short books, not by default. The number is the same. It's stored specifically as a number. So again, I can't search for 1938 and expect to find anything. But since Umbraco Search is almost fully extendable, we can of course change this behavior. And that's the first extension point we should be investigating. So what I've done is I've changed the perception of the radio button list property value. What Umbraco Search does is it employs a concept called a property value handler. It's kind of like a property value converter for rendering, but it's just for search. So what happens is a property value handler receives the raw property, it extracts the value, and it translates that into something Umbraco Search can use for indexing. And let's see how that works. So I have my radio button list property value handler here. It implements the iProperty value handler interface. It's discoverable, so we don't have to register this anywhere. It's kind of like the iProperty value converter. I need to tell Umbraco Search what this particular value handler can handle. And Umbraco Search knows that if it has something bespoke like this one, it'll prioritize my handler over the default, the built-in one. So this is all I need. And I'm saying, well, I can handle the radio button list. And now whenever Umbraco Search encounters a radio button list value or property, it'll query my value handler for the fields that should be indexed. And I say fields in plural because even though it's one property, a value handler can yield more fields. It's an unlikely case, but it's actually possible. But what's more, a field can have different values. As we sort of just discussed before, something is text, something's a number, something's a keyword. But a field can have multiple values at the same time just to make things tricky. So what I'm doing here is I'll grab the value of the property and I'll assume it's a string, so it'll be very short. And I'll say, well, I need one index field for this property, and I still need it as a keyword because I still need very short to be filterable, facetable. So otherwise my facets won't work. But I will also add that text to the texts collection, which instantly makes it full text searchable. So now my very short, my short, whatever, all the words, they are now in the text collection as well, and they are searchable. So I can search for short, and I will find, come on, Elasticsearch, I will find those that are short and very short. We can go ahead and we can do the same with Algolia. Search for short, we'll find the same 16 books. Go for Postgres, come on, connect to Postgres. There we go. Find the same books that are short or very short. And again, I did not write this for Algolia or Elasticsearch or anything else. I wrote this for Umbraco Search, which means if I go ahead and I swap my provider for this project later on, or I have another project and I need the same thing, I can just port this over. I don't have to worry about the concrete technology that's underpinning my search. I only have to worry about building for the abstraction. And that just makes things simpler, basically, and a lot more agile when we eventually figure out we need something else to power search. So this was the first extension point, the property value handler. The next extension point is the content indexer, but let's start here in the back into the content model. So as I said, please stay locked in. Let me just reload this, so I'm sure I won't tire them out again. All right, so as I said, the publish year, it's a number, and it is not full text searchable because a number is a number. It's supposed to be used for faceting, for filtering, for sorting, for all sorts of things, but not for full text search. If I wanted to make it full text searchable, I could, of course, implement another property value handler for the numeric, but that would be really boring because we just did that, so that would be a lame demo. What's more, though, when you add a property value handler, it's system-wide. So any numeric property would be handled by this value handler, or to say it in another way, any radio button list property right now in my entire system is handled by my property value handler. That's probably okay. But let's say I added a new property value handler for the publish year in order to make it full text searchable. It would work without a question. But then along comes someone at some point and adds the number of pages property, which is also a number. And then that number also becomes searchable and kind of pollutes the intent, which was to make the publish year searchable, because likely those number of pages will fall within something between 1 and a few thousand, and that kind of conflicts with the publish year. So all of a sudden my results are not really what I expected. So we can do something else. We can employ what is called a content indexer. And a content indexer is, well, it's in the name really. It's responsible for indexing content. And there are two default or two system content indexers. One is for all the system values, like the key of this document, the path, and everything in Umbraco Search needs to maintain your index. And then there's another content indexer, which iterates all of our value handlers. So it's actually responsible for invoking the value handlers we just saw. In principle, you can replace these if you really want to. You probably shouldn't, because they are there for a reason. But we can add in our own. We can have any number of content indexers. And Umbraco Search will simply aggregate fields across content indexes and eventually end up with a bunch of fields that goes into the index for a particular document. So a content indexer looks like this. I have created a content indexer called the publish year as decade content indexer. And its purpose is to grab that decade, that publish year, turn it into a decade, and then append S, so I can search for, well, in this case, the 1930s, and expect to find the book Rebecca. And what happens here is, well, every time Umbraco Search indexes something that's content, it'll invoke all the content indexes. So be careful. This will also be invoked for media and for members and for anything else. So my first order of business is to make sure that I actually am targeting a book before I do anything. Then the next thing I do is I grab the value of that publish year, expect it to be an integer. And given that, I'll turn that into the decade. So 1938 becomes 1930. I'll append an S, and I'll put that into the texts collection of a brand new field. And because it's in the texts collection, it will be aggregated and made searchable. So at this point, I can then go ahead and search for the 1930s. And I will find eventually somewhere here the book Rebecca. Maybe if we sort it by something else, it would work. Come on, Postgres. It's fine. It's still here. Or I could search for the 1920s. Let's go ahead and search with Elasticsearch instead. All this loading thing is because Docker sometimes drops all my connections, so it has to re-establish connections. So 1920s, I'm finding all the books, relevance, publish year here, finding all the books from the 1920s. And again, we can do it with Algolia. Algolia is broken. We can do it with Examine. It works. Brilliant. Now, the point again is the same. I have built an extension point. I've added something into my project. and it works. And we haven't really considered any search technology. We've only built something from Umbraco Search. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it's a really, really important point to get across. All of this just works with the various providers. We don't have to worry about the underlying search technology. So we can build our stuff, build our entire implementation, and then at some point in the future, figure out we need something else to power search because we need whatever feature of that particular search technology. We can swap it and rebuild our indexes, and we're good to go. That's pretty cool, I think. All right. We are making excellent time. So I will go ahead and show you one last extension point before I run back to my slideshow. So the last extension point I want to show you is kind of the, how should I put this? It's the extension point you should try to avoid to use. It is the all-empowering extension point. It's a notification handler. Whenever something gets indexed, or immediately before we push anything to any index, a notification is fired. So these are the Umbraco notifications you probably know. Umbraco Search will fire a notification. You can subscribe to it. You can cancel it, and that'll then prevent that particular document from being indexed. You can also manipulate anything on that document in your notification handler. So it's a very, very powerful extension point, but you need to use it extremely carefully. And there are two major reasons for that. One is you'll be surprised how much that notification handler can mess up any other extension point you've made. You can inadvertently and accidentally revert some of the extensions you made with your notification handler because you're doing something generic there, and all of a sudden the assumptions that you have in your notification handler, they no longer apply because someone else built an extension like a property value handler, and they might be counteracting one another. And I speak from experience here, it will happen. So if things start to misbehave, you might have a notification handler that is actually counterproductive towards the rest of your implementation. So that's a word of warning. And the more pressing reason why you should avoid using notification handlers, or at least you should really be careful with them, is they fire a lot. They fire for every single time you put anything into any index, the notification handler fires. And why is this any different from your content index or your value handler? Well, Umbraco Search has an optimization built in, which is every time we index something, every time the content indexer, they gather all the fields, all the fields are calculated, and that's an expensive operation. So once we've calculated all those fields and aggregated them across all the content indexers, we actually store a snapshot of those fields into your database before we push it into the index. Why? Because it makes it a lot faster to rebuild the index. Index rebuilds happens not only because you might have a corrupt examine index, but also when your site shifts instance in cloud, for example, it'll be a cold boot and it'll have to rebuild your index. And that can be a very, very expensive operation, because today we have to iterate your entire content tree and do all the calculus all over again. It's really, really expensive. It's still expensive to respool an index, but at least all we need to do now is to sort of spool across this cached values table and push all the stuff to the index. So it's not free, but it's a lot less expensive. But the notification handlers, they still fire, even though we're spooling from this cache, because we need to have them, for you to be able to manipulate the data or cancel those index operations. So this cache optimization sort of does not apply to the notification handlers. So that's a reason to be very careful about employing them. Or maybe to say this in another way, if you're doing anything out of process, let's say you want to fetch some data from somewhere else when you're indexing for a piece of document, you could do this because all this is async. You could go somewhere and fetch some data put it in here, and it'll be cached and it'll be ready for re-indexing later on. If you did this in a notification handler, you would be doing that every time we indexed, and eventually it'll crash something. So be very careful. Keep those notification handlers super, super light. What I've done with my notification handler is a very silly thing. For roughly half the books here, I am adding the pretty name of the search technology that sort of powers the index that's about to be hit by a piece of or by some index fields. So this fires for every piece of content for every index. And here I'm basically figuring out this is probably the name of the search technology. Let me put that into a new index field called search provider name in the text collection, so it becomes immediately searchable. And here I am actually manipulating the data that goes into the index. So I'm just appending. So this is a read-only collection, but I'm appending a field. I can override the collection. Again, be super careful. If you happen to override some of the system fields here, you're really out of luck, because Umbraco needs those, or Umbraco Search needs those, to maintain your index integrity. But you can do it. It's I think I've said enough warnings. But this fires for every indexing operation, and it will index its examine here. So if we search for examine, we'll find roughly half the books, 28. That's almost half of 50, a bit more. We go do the same in Elasticsearch. We will find, come on, 0, because it's not examine, it's elastic. Maybe if I can spell elastic, that would be good. There we go. We'll find again roughly half the books, because we had this thing invoked, and go to Postgres. If it will overload, it'll find nothing, but probably if I search for post, it'll find again roughly half the books. So Umbraco Search is very, very extendable. Some of these extension points need to be treated with care. And with that, I will hurry back and finish this slideshow so we can get on with our merry days. So what can you do now? Umbraco Search is out. It's out there. It's in beta. You can start experimenting. I know people are actually employing this in production already. So you can also, maybe if you're brave enough, you can use our beta product to go to production. But it's in beta. I think beta 6 is coming out today, I think. Not with anything special, just an update to some dependencies. Go experiment. And you can adopt it whenever you want. For 17 and for 18, it's an add-on. But for 19, this will be all right, this will be forced upon you in 19. I'm not going to say the other word. So you will eventually have to get used to using these. So start using it now. It's my best advice. It can coexist with Examine. It's powered by Examine, but Umbraco Search won't mess with whatever else you have. So your current search implementation, if it uses the Examine Manager, all that still works. So you can add it into what you have, and you can start porting things over without having to make a hard cut. And ultimately, Examine is still under the hood if you're using the Examine search provider. So if you need something super, super specific that Umbraco Search, for whatever reason, does not allow you to do, you can still go straight to the underlying search technology. And of course, that goes for any of the providers. If you bring in Elasticsearch because you need something specific from Elasticsearch, and that might not be in the Umbraco search scope, but you can still go through that through the underlying technology and use it. You just have to know that if you shift provider later on, you'll have to unwind that somehow. Documentation is plenty. We have moved all the documentation to the docs portal, so you'll find it under the DXP section. There's a lot of docs here already. Very minded developers, so it's probably right up your alley. I hope so, at least. there are also a fair few things out there. Let me just move you. I don't know if you can see you. Here we go. So I wrote an article for 24 days, sort of outlining the high level parts of Umbraco Search, why and how and when and what is it. On my own blog, you'll find a lot of details and a lot of experiments and a lot of getting nitty-gritty with Umbraco Search. So there's plenty for you to start looking at. And well, that's really it for me. I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but now would be the time.
Yep. If like anyone has any questions, you can ask.
Yeah, yes, I have. You mentioned about Umbraco search is going to forced upon us from version 19, right? Could you please explain about more about that? Because I'm using Algolia search for search functionalities. So how it is going to affect our future?
Well, you can still use Algolia as you want. I mean, this does not prevent you from doing anything, essentially.
Oh, it's like a built-in feature.
Come again?
Is it going to be a built-in feature from version 19? Is that
no, so Umbraco Search is an add-on from 17 and 18. We're going to put this into Umbraco core in version 19. That is the target at this point. But again, Umbraco will only ship the examine search provider. The other search providers, Algolia, Elasticsearch, Postgres, Typesense, what have you, those are providers that I've built. They are released on NuGet by me. You can use them, you can clone them, you fork them, contribute to them. They're open source. They are not HQ supported integrations at all. They are something that you can start with, and hopefully they work. If they don't work, hopefully we can collaborate to make them work. So you can use Algolia with Umbraco Search. It might make your life easier. It also might not. Again, there's nothing that prevents you from using any search technology, but it's as you probably also have realized, it's really not trivial to build an indexing logic for Umbraco. And there's a lot of code to maintain because there are a ton of edge cases that needs handling when you index content in a tree structure.
okay.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Thank you.
So is there anyone else who has any questions?
Otherwise, I think
Yeah.
we're all done here. Let me see if I can actually get this thing to say, "Hey, thank you." No, but thanks for joining. It was nice. I'm glad you had me. Let me see if I can stop this sharing.
Yeah, by the way,
There
like
you go.
you will be sharing the link to the GitHub link as well, right? For this demo in you can
This demo does not have a GitHub repo,
yeah,
but there are, again, if you go to my blog, you will find
yeah, I
a
have
lot of
seen it.
code, a lot of demos with, well, there's a lot of GitHub repos over there. So if you go that way, you'll find some of the same things essentially, because this books demo is kind of what I've been using for the better part of a year to try out different things.
Yeah. So if that's all, then thank you, Ken, for joining us and like going through Umbraco search and like we will have to do the search eventually. So thank you and thank you everyone for joining. So see you guys on the next one. Yeah. Bye.
Have a good one.
Yeah.